Here's the thing, if you know anything about Batman, it's that he knows how to defeat all of his foes, and even some of his friends, at any given instance should they turn on him. However, today let's do a bit of fantasy booking and see how the Dark Knight would take on others outside of his own comic lines. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and this is how Batman would defeat each member of the Avengers. The Hulk. One of the fiercest, most problematic threats facing anybody who dares go up against Earth's mightiest heroes is, of course, the Hulk. Ever since making his comic book debut in 1962, the Green Goliath has proved to be an unbeatable, unrelenting force of nature that some of the most powerful entities in the galaxy have failed to put down. So how would Batman take out the Hulk? Well, the key to this battle for the Dark Knight lies in catching the Jade Giant when he's at his weakest, and that being when he's in his everyday form of Bruce Banner. For Batman to get Hulk to that state would require the world's greatest detective to put his brain into gear. Now, the options on the table are either to concoct a tranquilizer strong enough to quell Hulk's rage, ambush Banner when he's not expecting it, or to outlast one of Hulk's frenzied rampages in order to tire the brute out so that he reverts back to his human form. However Batman gets to it, when he is confronted with plain old Bruce Banner, it's there that the Caped Crusader would deliver the finishing blow. Hawkeye. Now, Hawkeye wasn't quite a founding member of the Avengers, but he definitely was a part of the second wave of former recruits who joined Earth's mightiest heroes shortly after the group was founded. Clint Barton is a great character who brings so much to the table with his prolific aim, his impressive hand-to-hand combat skills, and the sheer imagination that he has, turning everyday objects into deadly weapons. But for Barton, the sad truth of the matter is that Batman would find him the easiest Avenger to take down. The Caped Crusader is frankly just better than Hawkeye on too many levels for Clint to even stand a chance against him. We've seen Batman battle and beat Green Arrow in the pages of DC Comics at times over the years, and any such fight with Hawkeye would likely go a similar way. Without trying to dismiss Hawkeye as a total loser, Bruce Wayne is just simply smarter, stronger, more bullish, has a wider array of gadgets available to him, and is a better stand-up, straight hand-to-hand fighter than Hawkeye. And once he gets in close, well, unfortunately, it's game over for Clint. Black Widow. For decades now, the characters of Marvel Comics and DC Comics have been continuously compared, and where it comes to Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff has so often been compared to DC's Lady Shiva. On the surface, Widow and Shiva are two badass female assassins who can kill a person in numerous ways, and all in the blink of an eye. But diving a little deeper though, there are some notable differences between these characters. For Shiva, she edges it just as the better hand-to-hand fighter, with her mastering of multiple martial arts going in her favor, but where Natasha is concerned, Widow has a better catalogue of gadgets and tools up her sleeve. Famously, Lady Shiva is one of those rare characters to actually get the better of Batman in a fight, with her knowledge of different fighting styles being even more extensive than the Dark Knight's. Now, using his battles against Shiva as a measuring stick, Batman probably would be able to beat Black Widow in a straight-up fight, and one would imagine that Bruce would have more than enough gadgets to nullify any tricks that Natasha had up her sleeve. But if we're talking in a longer game chase scenario, Widow's methods of stealth and disguise could come into play here, but as we all know, Bruce himself has been known to employ similar techniques, and the mixture of his tracking tech and his smarts means that any stealth-based situation probably would tend to go in his favor. Ant-Man. The Hank Pym incarnation of Ant-Man was one of the founding 5 members of the original Avengers, and Pym remains one of the outright most fascinating characters in all of comic book history. But when faced with Batman, Hank Pym is destined to end up on the losing side of the battle. Regardless of which persona he's taking on, be that Ant-Man, Goliath, Giant Man, or even Yellow Jacket, the Caped Crusader would be able to deal with whatever Pym offers up. The scanners built into the Batsuit would pick up on Hank should he try to shrink, while the suit's impenetrability means that Pym couldn't even get inside if he wanted to. Should this founding Avenger opt to go big, on the other hand, and embrace his more Giant Man side, well, this simply gives Batman a bigger target to aim for. You can't put it past Bruce to pull an Empire Strikes Back maneuver and utilize the Batwing to tie up an enlarged Hank Pym in knots, sending him tumbling to his downfall. And if we're talking about the Scott Lang version of Ant-Man, well, that is a slightly different fight, in that Scott isn't as smart as Hank Pym, but he is better at thinking on his feet. Unfortunately though, it's probably a fight that Batman would still win. Wasp. When talking about Ant-Man, particularly in regards to being a founding member, it's impossible not to talk about Wasp. Like Hank Pym, Janet is another who founded Earth's mightiest heroes, and similarly has the ability to shrink in size. Now granted, Wasp does have the ability to fly and project energy blasts, but those additional powers likely wouldn't cause Batman all that much grief. For a Batman vs Wasp fight, the Dark Knight would pull very much the same plan of attack that he would use on Ant-Man. Janet has no way to get under Batman's skin due to how solidly built and protected the Batsuit is, and the small stature that Wasp is so often used to her advantage wouldn't be a problem for him. When it comes to any attacks that Wasp would launch his way, Batman has proven time and time again that his reflexes and dodging ability is more than enough to outmaneuver some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Not only has Bruce got the physical advantage and exceedingly better fighting skills, even the skills that make Janet so unique would be rendered entirely useless by the technology that the world's greatest detective has to his name: Quicksilver. Like his sister Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver was one of the second batch of heroes to join the Avengers. Despite previously being a villain, Mr. Maximoff here eventually settled into using his powers for good. When it comes to a possible fight with Batman, readers of DC Comics will already have an idea of how the Dark Knight could stop Quicksilver. Being the ever-prepared soldier that he is, Bruce Wayne has the perfect way to stop somebody with the exact abilities of Quicksilver. And of course, we're talking about the Flash. And you know what? Bruce has devised a way that's pretty horrific when dealing with his, friend. He's got a projectile that would send the speedster into multiple conversions akin to a gargantuan epileptic seizure being experienced at the speed of light. Now, Batman hasn't actually used this weapon yet, although Ra's al Ghul did once use it on Wally West, with Wally confessing to his fellow Justice Leaguers that he was begging for his death after the projectile was lodged in his spinal column. So yeah, things probably aren't going to go well for Quicksilver should he try to go one-on-one. Thor. When it comes to being a bona fide god, there are really no weaknesses whatsoever for someone like Thor. Here we're talking about a character who has lived for over 1,000 years and has stood up and toppled opponents with unimaginable power. Even on those rare times where Thor has been beaten, the Odin's son still manages to eventually dust himself down, refocus, and return to fight another day. In the world of Batman, the world's greatest detective has faced the godlike Superman on several occasions, and Bats has usually won out during these confrontations. But the thing with Superman, though, is that he has one major weakness in the form of kryptonite. So therefore, beating Thor sounds like an impossible task for Batman. Well, it might be to some, but the Dark Knight would never give up. He could play up to Thor's competitive nature and engage him in a never-ending fight simulation, which actually is the plan that Bruce has for taking down Wonder Woman should she ever turn against him. The Insider suit would also be another wise choice for Batman here, providing him with the combined powers of the Justice League's heaviest hitters. Likewise, getting hold of a Radiant bullet would actually work wonders, with Radiant having helped bring down Darkseid in the past, and if it's good enough for a new god, chances are it will do the same sort of damage to the God of Thunder. But there's also a more sinister option, in that Bruce could actually manipulate Thor to carry out an act that would actually make him unworthy of wielding Mjolnir, and when he's depowered to such an extent, well, it's going to be a much easier battle. Captain America. When looking at the mainstays of the respective rosters of Marvel Comics and DC Comics, the two most impressive strategists who jump off the proverbial and literal page are likely Captain America and Batman. If given notice, the world's greatest detective and the Sentinel of Liberty are capable of mapping out a plan to take down any threat, exploiting even the most minute of vulnerabilities in order to benefit themselves and their teams. The pair's minds may be alike, but Cap has the added advantage of the enhanced abilities bestowed upon him by the Super Soldier Serum. But where Batman has the edge, though, is in basic physical combat. Sure, Captain America is a brilliant hand-to-hand fighter, yet he doesn't have the extensive skills or knowledge of Bruce Wayne, with Bruce having traveled the globe, mastering a multitude of different fighting disciplines that have helped him to become one of the very best hand-to-hand combatants on the entire planet. In that regard, a victory for Batman over Captain America comes down to simply engaging Steve Rogers in a basic, fundamental fistfight. Granted, Cap can hit like a truck, but Batman's mastery of technique would ultimately shine through in this battle, given that he has succeeded against similarly powerful characters in his own adventures. Iron Man. While Batman shares so much in common with Captain America, he likely shares even more similar traits with the one and only Tony Stark. Stark is essentially Bruce Wayne with that ego turned up to 11 and a greater appetite for advanced technology. Iron Man obviously has the tech advantage over Batman in terms of the vast array of suits and the accompanying gadgets that each outfit brings. But Stark isn't facing some everyday villain, he's facing the Dark Knight. With Bruce Wayne, you have a character whose greatest attribute is his mind and his ability to carve up the absolutely perfect tailored strategy to take down any foe. The question of who has the greater mind between the two is likely too close to call, but one way that Batman clearly edges out Iron Man is in his sheer strength and physicality. If the Caped Crusader could play to Stark's ego, making him irate by poking the bear as it were, that would draw Iron Man into where Bruce could get a hold of his opponent and physically dominate him. Of course, you can't also rule out the wonderful toys that Batman himself can bring to the table, particularly if an EMP rifle was to hand, because without his suit, Iron Man is just Tony Stark, and that is much less of a threat. Scarlet Witch. So, the obvious first issue to address if confronted with Scarlet Witch is the ludicrously powerful magical abilities at Wanda's fingertips. So, in order for Batman to beat her, he's going to have to treat her like the Hulk and try to neutralize those powers. For Scarlet Witch, she's a character who is often as erratic as she is powerful, and considering this is someone who's one of the most powerful beings in all of comic book history, that should give you a good indicator of how unhinged that she can be at times. If Batman is to have any chance of beating her, he has to play a little dirty. And that means preying on her insecurities, pushing her to the edge of insanity, forcing her to become her own worst enemy. Should the Dark Knight get Wanda to become too frazzled, that's when she may let her magical guard down, in turn making it an easy target for Batman to physically stop. But the problem is that Wanda's powers are so extreme that she could erase the Caped Crusader out of existence just by wishing it so. On the chance that he catches her on one of her more forgiving days, Batman could even come to Scarlet Witch in peace, much like he did to Ace in the Justice League Unlimited series. There, Batman made himself completely vulnerable as he approached the all-powerful Ace, with her realizing that he had a pure soul and good intentions, which in turn allowed Bats to reach out and connect with Ace on a personal level. And I know that at the end of the day, this video is all about how Batman would beat the Avengers, but let's be honest here, there are some fights that Batman probably just can't win, and so finding peace and friendship out of that is probably going to be the only victory that he could achieve. And that is saying something. And there we go, my friends. That was how Batman would defeat each member of the Avengers. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. If you want to chat to me further, you can do so over on Twitter at RetroJ or you can swing by Live and Let's Dice. It's my personal gaming channel where I stream every single Wednesday and Sunday. As always, I've been Jules, you have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.